Hello, my name is Dr. Ian Burgen, and the title of this program, this series of programs, is It Takes a Village, Raising Resilient Kids in Today's World. And then you may ask, why resiliency? Well, we know the world is tough and challenging. It always was, and it always will be. But what we're seeing and what the research is pointing to is that while we're doing a good job as parents and educators of providing nurturing, protective, caring environments for our kids, one of the things we're noticing is that too many of those kids, as they approach young adulthood and early adulthood, aren't developing those strong inner resources that are necessary to deal with all that life is going to throw at them. This is evidenced by increased anxiety, depression, substance abuse levels that are really at epidemic levels, suicidal ideation. There's some floundering in finding occupations or finding jobs that bring happiness and purpose and meaning to their lives. And the college dropout rate is really becoming quite high. So the purpose of this program is to share some of the research around resiliency, but also to invite people in from the community just to sort of share their insights, their advice, because it's a tough, tough challenge, and when we all work together on it, it makes it a lot easier. One of the things that the research is clear about is that it's really important in giving kids tools to deal with some of the challenges that they're going to face. And some of those tools involve learning how to handle emotions and get through tough times and to sort of negotiate the pathways in life. So my guest today, my very special guest, is Mr. Phil Hulbig, who is a longtime special educator in the Franklin Public Schools. And he has been working on what looks like a very, very powerful tool as a way of sort of helping, as I mentioned, kids navigate what can be sometimes a challenging life. So I'm going to welcome Phil to the program. It really is great having you here. And I was hoping that you would sort of begin by sharing your rather rich educational background and experience. And then if you might tell us a little bit about how you came to begin to think about developing a model for problem solving, for getting through kind of tough times and thinking about ways to solve problems. If you'd be willing to sort of share, again, your educational background, and then what need did you see out there, and how did you come to begin thinking about this model? I think that would be helpful for us.
Well, I guess in terms of my educational background, it's kind of a unique story, and they probably all blend together a little. The program, my educational background, and where I am today all kind of fit together. I tell people that I'm kind of a curious anomaly. I've been in special education now about 35 years. Unlike most people who wait until grad school to go in, I went in right at kindergarten screening.
Interesting.
And so my struggles with school are one of the most formative parts of my development. I was a non-reader until probably third grade.
Really?
I was a non-writer until probably fifth grade. And I struggled mightily in school. And it wasn't until I got to a certain point in high school where I had, back at that time, the policy was kind of move the kid into different classrooms, put them in resource programs, I put them into maybe vocational types of programs and that kind of thing. And so slowly through my educational career, I got moved into lower and lower level classes, kind of quietly. And then by the time my sophomore year, I had pretty much bombed out of all of those. My prospects for my life didn't look, were not positive. My parents sat down at a meeting in school, and it turned out that they didn't have any idea that during this whole process I was being sort of moved into lower level classes and certain opportunities, and I think on paper it probably looked good. They were gonna suggest that I get moved into vocational classes. And my father is a carpenter, and he immediately said, well, why would I want him to go into that? I can teach him how to do a trade. I want him to go to college and you people to teach him the things that I can't teach him. And when they said, well, Mr. Hulbig, even at this stage, if he got straight A's, he wouldn't be able to go to college because he's in these classes. So, make a long story short, he fought to have me put in the highest level classes and agreed that they would get me a tutor to help me keep up with the work and the workload. I don't think anybody at the time actually really believed that any of this was going to work, but they didn't realize the tutor that I was going to get. The tutor that I got, probably the most important person in my educational life.
Wow.
It's a guy named Ned Bradford. I can use names, right?
Yes, you can.
And he actually worked at Curry College at that time in the PAL program, which is the program for the advancement of learning, which was run by Dr. Gertrude Webb. It was really one of the only college programs at that time that offered any support or even brought kids in with learning disabilities.
So just let me just get the path straight of the story. So you are accepted into Curry College? Are you at Curry College at this time, or this is a tutor who just happens to be associated with Curry College?
Who I had.
Yes.
I showed up, and he taught me this thing he called metacognition. Okay. Up until that point, nobody had ever told me what my diagnosis was. Nobody had ever tried to explain to me what that actually meant. Okay. In middle school, I can't even tell you how important it is to tell kids what's wrong with them. So in a way that they can understand it, it needs to be done in a way that they can conceptually grasp. Because my definition was I was retarded. And I had I was in classrooms with kids who were mentally retarded, Down syndrome, lots of different disorders. Back in the early 80s, everybody was there in that, you know, I mean, there was no, nowadays, we do a nice job of trying to make sure that kids with similar profiles get into similar spots. This is at a time where that really was not happening. And, you know, so I had this kind of self-image of myself that I'm not going to be able to do anything. My best bet is to maybe go, you know, become a garbage man.
So no one along the way had ever sat down with you and just said, Phil, listen, you're learning differently, or that this has nothing to do with how smart you are, so that somehow you could understand what was happening to you. So no one along the way kind of had done that with you, or sufficiently for you to understand it.
People had said things to me like, Phil, you're very, very smart.
Okay.
Now don't do these problems right here. Okay.
Oh, okay.
You know, they had not formally said, the word dyslexia was never mentioned in conversation. You know, really because people were concerned about my self-esteem. They didn't want me to feel bad about myself.
Okay.
The tutor who I got...
Yes, I want to hear more about this incredible tutor.
Turned out to have a learning disability himself. Okay, and he said, oh, your problem is you got dyslexia. You know, and just kind of like that. You got dyslexia. Yeah.
So there was a name for it.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
And, you know, well, what does that mean? Well, he was young at the time, too, and I think he was learning how to do certain neurological tests. So he gave me a Wechsler and did something kind of probably illegal in terms of the Wechsler. You're not supposed to do this at all, you know, but he gave me the test. And then after he was done with the test, he walked me through it and said, this is what this means. The reason you got this score is because, you know, you have a really lousy short-term memory. But look at this score right here, your comprehensions. You know, and he was able to explain for me in very concrete intellectual terms what my learning profile was. It wasn't even so much that he had just given me the way, I mean, he had gone test by test and talked about the neurology and talked about the test.
The things that you were stronger in, the things that you were weaker in, gave you a good profile.
How you could say, like, you know, take this skill that you have over here and apply it to this weakness right here, put the two of them together, and look, it's not a problem anymore. You're going to do things differently than everybody else. but you can still do everything that everybody else does. Okay, you got to stop trying to do this the exact way everybody else is, because that way is not working for you. I mean, that was a major realization for me. I had spent my entire life trying to do what everybody else was doing, and I couldn't keep up. It didn't look pretty enough, you know, and so, you know, he showed me this, and within I guess 1 year of me, being exposed to this, I went from getting, D's and whatnot in the lowest level classes to being in college prep classes, which I think was like 3 levels above, and getting C's. Now, I know that doesn't sound awesome, but to go from where I was to there, okay, was pretty good. And he worked at Curry, and so we tried this sort of strategy to get in my senior year. While I was going to high school, I took classes at Curry.
Oh.
And I purposely took classes that were ones that people would question. I took creative writing. I took
What do you mean people would question?
Well, because I'm dyslexic.
Got it.
The idea was I'm going to take. Well, I took a creative writing. I took like a sociology class. Like classes that I could show that to see if I could do it first off, and also classes that I could maybe show because my transcript was not going to be stunning.
Got it.
So I took the classes. I'd go to school. I'd drive to Curry. I'd take the classes, and lo and behold, I got A's on these. I mean, like I got my very first A plus.
How did that feel?
In a college level class. Well, I'll tell you what. Like, you want to talk about resiliency? That's the key to resiliency, is real success in something real.
Real success, not like patting you on the head and telling you when you know that it's
right.
right.
I mean, that's one of the things that's always hard to talk about people who don't understand failure. When you fail a lot, you get really good at spotting people who are patting you on the head and saying, "You're doing fine, you're doing great." Okay.
It's patronizing and condescending.
Well, but you're nice, and you're not going to say you're patronizing me, or you're just going to like, "Okay, I'm sorry." I mean, like, in one of my trainings that I do to try to express to people what it's like to be dyslexic, this is one of my, here's a real life story. When I was a kid, my mom had read this thing in Good Housekeeping magazine where, when the kid writes his name totally backwards, you bring him up to the mirror, you hold it up in front of the mirror, and you go, "See, now it's the right way." And the mirror flips it around, and it looks the right way. And I can remember sitting in front of the mirror, my mom standing there holding it up, and I'm looking at that, looking there. Okay, and I had no idea what she was talking about. Not a clue. But I said I did.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And like that's like the beginning, I think, of the real disability part of my disability right there, is not telling people what I can't actually notice. I'm not, I don't want to get too much into the dyslexia part, but I mean, one of the things that happens with people with dyslexia is it's like almost it's easier for people, and it's kind of like a form of blindness. I don't see the errors. I'll write something out, and it'll look great to me. So you
can't. So even if someone points it to you,
well, no, then somebody points out to me, and then okay, I can see it. Or if I come back later and I go over it and meticulously go over it again and again, it's kind of like those illusion sort of things where you got the illusion picture where 1 minute it's a little old lady, and then you look and it's a young, it's a young lady. You know, like 1 minute I'll be looking at my work, it'll be this beautiful young lady, and then somebody goes, "No, that's an ugly lady." And then boom, oh, there it is. It's an, and so I got into Curry. Okay, make a long story short. Okay, my work at going to school afterwards got me in, and because I had already started taking classes early, I was finished up with, I went into, this could be a topic for another show, I went into all of the courses that I wanted to show people that I didn't have a learning disability, okay, which I think is a phase. In my work, I see it happen time and time again. You want to prove to people that it's not, you're wrong, I know, I am fine. And so I went into English, I finished up my English major, I went into education. Okay, got a minor in psychology. I joined the Alexander Graham Bell Honor Society. I wrote a play. So I graduated cum laude and went off into the world of work. And I had this really powerful thing that I felt, because I went into education, because I felt like, holy smokes, I know something that most people don't, get. You know, most people I feel who go into education, this is not a slight against people, like my experience is most people go into education because they were good at it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I went into education because I was bad at it and figured out how to get good at it. And so I had this, like, I was like a born-again teacher, you know. I went into that first classroom and I had my first 2 students, okay, and it was at the time the IDEA, Individuals with Disability
Yes,
Act,
yeah,
had just
IDEA,
come in,
right, yeah.
and there was this movement for inclusion, and they had taken 2 kids who would have been institutionalized under the old system, and they brought them into the schools, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I want to do.
Right.
And I walked in there, and I had my mind blown, because these kids were so needy. Okay, it was, you know, within a month of school, they were telling me that one of my students, they were going to have to remove him because he was so explosive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that we don't think he's going to be able to fit here. And like a lot of stuff that I brought with me from my education, my behavior modification and all these stuff, with these, you know, I mean, behavior modification set this kid up. Okay. You know, a lot of the beautiful, colorful little routines that I had learned, he didn't like color. Okay, he was just like impossible to teach. I was given a month to try to pull him together, and you know, so I started doing the metacognitive thing with him. And within a month, he went from having multiple blow-ups to maybe 1 blow-up a month.
Talk now, you said I went and did the metacognitive thing with him. Go back sort of and say, okay, now you have this student in front of you that you could sort of relate to, be empathic with, because you understood that the struggles of someone who's trying to learn and who's having a difficult time. So you said I went the metacognitive route. Tell us specifically.
What I did was I basically modeled kind of what my tutor had taught me.
Yeah.
Okay. Not all of it worked. As I'm saying this beautiful, it didn't all work.
Right.
In fact, but it was a neat situation to be in where nobody knew what to do with this kid. Okay, and at least I had some sort of things that I could bring to the table where, you know, I started talking to him about learning, about problem solving, you know, the different types of different skills that your brain has. That it applies in different ways to different problems. Okay, you know, essentially the program that I have is just a breakdown of the 9 essential types of learning styles, learning modalities that you would have when you approach a problem. Okay, and so you know, I'm kind of talking, you know, in a way, I'm teaching neurology to a 8-year-old.
Right.
But I was trying to do it in a way that he would understand. Sometimes I was successful, sometimes
Right.
I wasn't. But that underlying, learn about your own learning, learn about yourself. A lot of kids who have these emotional disabilities the locus of their difficulty comes from this fact that they're looking for another person to put the blame off. Like, it's so painful, that whatever failure it was, they couldn't stay in their seat. Okay, well, they can't even just say, I'm so excited I can't stay in my seat. They have to say, well, this kid over here made me get out of my seat, or my mom did, you know, and getting them to start saying, well, wait a second, but sure, maybe that happened, but what is going on with you? And that's
So they could understand sort of their inattention or their need to move about, and there's enough respect for them that you were able to help them understand why they're doing it, so they don't feel the need to blame other people for it, or...
Right, and even set a bar for themselves.
Okay.
Like, you know, what they believe should happen. You know, well, how should this class run? You know, you can ask them questions like that. Well, how would you like, if you're having a hard time learning science this way, then what as your teacher, what would you like me to do so that you can learn science? And get them engaged in those conversations. Because once they say, I think you should do da 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 da, well, if you do whatever they suggested and it doesn't work, now you come back and you say, well, that didn't work. What else could we do? I think we should try this. You know, and now they're more apt to buy into what you're saying because you listen to them and you've taught them that reciprocal
It's respectful, isn't it, though? I mean, extraordinarily respectful to hear what they have to say about their own learning. We so often dismiss that.
It's profound.
Yeah.
Like, you know, once you start actually as a teacher doing that, you start to realize that the best ideas you can come up with as a teacher are actually coming from the kids. You just need to figure out how to get it to come out.
And don't you have that sort of profound belief, I just knowing you, I believe you do, sort of that every kid wants to be a good kid. They just don't know how to do it, and we think there's no such thing really as a bad kid or they're just struggling to find a way to maybe to get noticed, or that people see them and you know, just that they want to be heard, and they'll find any way they can to get noticed. But yeah,
it's
so
like it's like an extension of that whole, like, I feel like the nature versus nurture sort of debate, the biology, like being a person who's dyslexic, I can tell you I have certain biological tendencies. Okay, I can show you my great-grandfather wrote a novel about his life, okay, which is really the story of a person with possibly dyslexia and ADD.
Interesting. Okay.
Back in the turn of the century, you know, he dropped out of school in 6th or 7th grade because he was just bored, okay, and every other word in the entire story is spelled wrong. Yes. So we come from a, but he went on, he became the building inspector of Westwood.
Yeah.
You know, I mean. And that, you know, like there are options, you know, like people could work around these things. And part of, I think, for the resiliency piece for people is just knowing that there are workarounds. We have, you know, that we don't have, you don't have to be so rigid and have, you know, get your spelling words, let's say for me, have your spelling words memorized the same way everybody else did. You know, doing the flashcards or whatnot, you know. As I'm a teacher now, I wish I had known some of those techniques when I was a kid. It probably would have helped me a lot, that you can do things in other ways. That your biology does not dictate your entire life. That message I don't think gets out there enough. We often say, you know, oh, well, you have ADHD, and I can't even tell you how many kids come into my classroom,
right.
and they go, I can't pay attention, Mr. Hulbig.
Yes.
I have ADHD. Yes. You know, and I'm like, okay, well, I have ADHD too.
Yeah.
You better sit down because that's not what it means, you know, and that's a really
interesting. That's a great example.
Powerful and important conversation
Yes.
to have with a kid because, you know, they're smart. Attention deficit. Well, attention deficit, I know what that means, and I know what a disorder is, so it must mean I can't pay attention. So rather than the diagnosis being something that's going to help them manage, it becomes something that actually sends them off into more ADHD-like behavior because they are under the impression that my biology can't be changed.
And it almost sometimes becomes an excuse. Oh, I can't do it because I have this, rather than, yeah.
Right. I'm disabled. You know. So that issue surfaces and resurfaces, and you know, so my feeling is it's part of it is getting them to understand. You know, I'm not saying that one of the problems I have a lot when I talk with people is that we have this polarizing conversation about things. Okay, and so you say one thing, I say like ADHD. The term itself leads kids into believing that they can't do something because it's biology. It's my biology. I have ADHD. I have a disorder. I can't get over it. That's not really what it means. It means that you have these types of behaviors that you need to watch out for. And you're actually lucky that you're ADHD because you know that you're going to be a little disorganized. You're going to be a little impulsive. You may say things without thinking. And here are the types of situations that are going to get you in trouble. We already know, based on your profile, that you're probably going to be a person that does these things. Here's what you can do.
Right.
Not to have these things blow up in your face. And we have all these strategies that are already out there to help kids. We just don't have any formalized way of teaching them to understand that. And that's sort of where my program, Wholistic Problem Solving, kind of comes in. What I've done over the years, I've kept looking back, well, what am I doing? And really what I'm doing is I'm teaching neurology to kids.
Got it.
You know?
All right, so I have a question for you then, because we've got a couple minutes left, and I want to make sure what you're going to be doing with this what you've said today is very important for parents to hear, for kids to hear. You're going to be doing some presentation on this, can you speak a little bit about that as we wind down here? As you're doing a formal presentation to share your model as...
Yeah, I'm actually looking to do kind of a series of
Okay,
presentations.
good, right.
You know, I have one set up off the top of my head. It's the last Monday of February.
February 25th, I believe, right?
At 6:30. Thank you.
Yes.
You know, and that's at the Bridge Center, which is in Bridgewater, which is a fantastic summer camp for kids who have all sorts of different disabilities. And you know, I have in the works other presentations that are just on understanding holistic problem solving. The idea really behind it is if we, you know, we talk about these kids, they have a difficulty with flexibility. And what we've been trying to do with these kids who have difficulty with flexibility is basically teach them every situation that they can get into. You know, especially with kids who are on the spectrum, we make all of these lists of social stories to get them through certain situations. What I am trying to do with my program is maybe we can start teaching a problem-solving technique that is reproducible in academic settings, in social settings, and in, you know, like I've been using it to teach skateboarding. You know, you can use it in all of these different ways, but it's the same basic steps that you go through. Then when you have that kid who's very inflexible, he shows up on a new situation that you don't have a social story for, that he isn't prepared for, he can say, okay, well, wait a second. Step one, I've got to sense this problem. I'm going to look around, use my senses, okay? I'm going to pay attention to things. And, you know, I mean, if I had more time, I'd kind of go over each level, but the attention level is really your emotion level, you know? Your attention is controlled by wherever your emotions are. You know, if you're passionate about something, you're going to be paying attention to that.
Right.
Really don't like that very much, you're going to try not to pay attention to that. So, you know, you're going to ask yourself, well, how do where are my emotions sending my attention? Is there is there a situation that's happened in the past? I'm going to use my memories. What memories do I know about this? Is there an analogous situation that I can draw? Is this situation like some other kind of situation? That's a big one for my spectrum kids. Can I analyze this situation a little? Can I put it into a category, or maybe a sequential step-by-step sort of a thing? Is there a metaphor I can use? Metaphor, I use more of a metaphor as the neurological definition.
Got it.
In my program, more of what can I use to explain this to a person to make them understand what I'm thinking. Okay, for me as a dyslexic, it's kind of a powerful realization to get people to realize that the words you're using are fine for you, but they're not fine for the other person. The other person may have no idea what you're talking about. They may interpret those words completely differently, particularly words that are emotionally charged.
Got it.
So can I put what I'm saying into better metaphors for this person to understand? Maybe I don't even need to talk. Maybe I should write something down. Judge the situation. And I have some lessons that I do on helping kids understand judgment. Create a response, and then after I've done creating my response, utilizing my problem-solving steps, the last step is what I call the truth level, or the moment of truth. Analyze what happened and do the whole process again. Okay, to see if did you come up, did you create the right solution at the end there? Okay, can you do it better? So that now they have they can walk themselves through those 9 steps, in different situations, and hopefully reach better conclusions, rather than allowing themselves to get emotionally upset. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say.
It makes so much sense. Now, here's my question to you as we wind down. Is this presentation that's going to be in Bridgewater, are there going to be any in this area, or is it something that maybe you're going to be planning to do so that people who live in Franklin and the surrounding towns would have easier access to come hear you speak about it or talk about it? Or
well, I've been talking with the people at Lifelong Learning.
Yes.
And we had a couple of them set up, but some things had fallen through. So I have to. That's in the
that's good to know.
That's in the process right now. I'm right now I'm going to be setting up that one in February, and then there's going to be another one, date to be determined, at the Bridge Center.
Excellent.
I'm also looking to do one in North Attleboro, hopefully also too. They're all kind of in the works at this stage. But my hope is to start kind of getting people to understand how the program works. Ultimately, my ultimate goal is if I could get everybody, my hope is if I can get everybody kind of thinking about how we all solve problems and had a unified language for how we solve problems, be able to help each other out a lot.
Absolutely. And that's the whole purpose of this show. And I'm so glad that you were kind enough to come on and share all of that. It's tough kind of talking about your own issues and brave, to come forward, because I think that is so powerful when people are willing to share their stories, especially the struggles. And kids out there know they're not alone in this, and it's especially when a powerful role model is willing to share. Now, Phil, just because this is such an interesting topic and there are so many parents out there who may have questions or seek advice on this and would like more information, is there contact information for you? Is there a way that you could make yourself available to answer questions for parents? Or?
Absolutely, and I would love to answer any questions that people have. I have a website. It's philhulbig.com, and I can be reached through my email, which is phulbig@yahoo.com. My website's brand new, so I'm working on that, but
Excellent.
I can be contacted through there, and I always respond to all of my emails.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Dr. Ann Burgen. This is It Takes a Village, Raising Resilient Kids in Today's World. Thank you.